I'm back in my TARDIS, and today I'm going to continue to talk about, which it has been a while, but I'm going to continue talking about David Tennant, my favorite Doctor, the 10th Doctor, and the specials that he was in, and why they're so important and why they're so memorable. So, allons-y. Like the most about Tennant specials, and it may work to its advantages and disadvantages than the Matt Smith's Christmas specials or otherwise specials, because the David Tennant specials were actually key to the story. You had to make sure that you watched the David Tennant specials, because sometimes if you didn't watch them, you wouldn't have any idea what was going on. So, with that being said, let's get started on the first one, which is one of the most important, the Christmas Invasion. Now, in the Christmas Invasion, that's the first episode where we see David Tennant in his role as the Doctor. It's very, for us new Whovians, we're very uncertain. It's our first regeneration, and for other Whovians, a new regeneration, just any typical regeneration. But it's really not a typical regeneration, because as much as he's surrounded by people that he knows, and it's sort of a comfortable environment, it's not comfortable because of the way that there's this new alien race that's just popped up out of nowhere, and his companions feel helpless. All of a sudden, without the Doctor, you realize how desperately the world needs the Doctor. And the one thing I like about this episode, looking at it from an analytical standpoint, is that it really shows who the Doctor is as a person, because it shows that he doesn't change. He may change a little bit in terms of personality and face, but he's still the same man, and he can still do the same thing, which is save the Earth from aliens. Because you see how desperately the humans need the Doctor when the Sycorax attack the Earth, and yet once he does come back from his little sleep, you see his quirky little smile, and he defeats the Sycorax more easily than he's defeated like any other alien in any of the other Doctor Who episodes. And it really shows a lot about David Tennant's character. What I also like is the dialogue between him and Rose, like the banter between, like the insanity of this man, but also I don't even know what to say, because it's such a good episode. It's a good starter. It's not one of my favorites of his specials, but it's a pretty good episode, and it's a great introduction to Doctor Who. I mean, you should watch Eccleston first, but I mean, it's a good place to start, because what better place to start than my favorite Doctor's start. Now, the next Christmas special, which is The Runaway Bride, is actually, it's very important in terms of not only Season 3, but Season 4, because The Runaway Bride introduces the character of Donna Noble, and unlike many of his companions, or his future companions, she doesn't immediately jump at the chance to go with the Doctor in his TARDIS and explore time and space. She's introduced in this sort of fun little episode that we find it later in Season 4 is actually very pivotal, but I've already discussed how important Donna Noble is, and the fact that she's my favorite companion. But the thing I like about The Runaway Bride, and rewatching it multiple times, is that I loved Rose because she was my first companion. Eccleston was my first Doctor, but when he regenerated, I was a little upset, but then fell in love with Tennant instantly. But the thing with Rose is that you can see when you watch The Runaway Bride, especially for me, how much I hated Donna Noble in the beginning, and now I love Donna Noble, just because of the fact that you have to accept the fact that a companion is gone. The key to that episode was that the Doctor had to accept that Rose was gone, and it was one of the companions that he really truly loved. And as we saw in the episode where Sarah Jane and Rose share screen time, you see a lot of similarities between who's considered the greatest companion of all time to a companion that was there for 2 seasons, was a big part of the Doctor's life, and a big part of bringing him back and making him a more cheery man instead of an old grump like he was. So I like The Runaway Bride. It's got funny moments. Hell, it has really funny moments with Donna in it. The fact that they have the reception without her, for one, but it's a decent episode. I think I like watching it more than the Christmas Invasion, although sometimes I like to kind of do like a whole throwback for Doctor Who, and I like the whole chemistry between Nikki, Jackie, and Rose and that little clan of characters. But as of right now, Runaway Bride is a little bit better on my list. Time Crash. It's a fun little episode. It's not meant to be a narrative because, I mean, it's really not a narrative. It's a 7-minute little children in need episode. But I feel like it's important to mention because it's important to stay true to the classic era and remember where your roots came from. As Matt Smith said in his Regeneration, if any of you guys have seen it. If you haven't, I don't want to spoil anything else. But when David Tennant really... Not David Tennant, the 10th Doctor himself is explaining to the 5th Doctor that he was his doctor, and he appreciates that incarnation of himself and appreciates his past. It's a kind of a heartfelt episode, and it's filled with a lot of comedy. It's filled with a lot of gasps from the audience, especially those who watch the classic season of Doctor Who. And it's also just a little fun episode to introduce the whole wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey about how the Doctor knows what he's doing because he's seen himself do it before as his future self. And it's just a fun little episode that I thought I'd kind of throw in there because it's a really cool episode. I like it, and I enjoy watching it. The TARDIS and the Titanic. Doesn't that sound like a framework for a great Doctor Who episode? Voyage of the Damned was an episode that... It was one of the episodes that really didn't follow the story of the Doctor, and you didn't really have to see it in order to understand the story. Which, in a way, I mean, some people haven't seen it. And then when they watch Season 4 and they realize that the Titanic's been brought back, they're thinking, oh, well, what's that have to do with it? I guess it's an episode I didn't watch. But, hey, at the same time, it's a really good episode because it's not the actual Titanic. Which is, I do like that about it. And now, Voyage of the Damned was an episode that really showed the Doctor and his power over people. It showed people who really believed in him and people who really doubted him. And it was a very funny and quirky episode, but the one part that I liked about it that really sets it apart for me than the rest is his declaration of the fact that he's the Doctor. When he explains to people who he is and what exactly he is, it's sort of a reminder to what we already know. And if you go back and look at episodes that you watched during the Eccleston era, when you were in the perspective of the companion and you didn't know the Doctor yet and you were being introduced to him, it's nice to go back and remember that you were once one of these characters who didn't know who the Doctor was, and he has to make sure that he gets it through to you who he is, and he's going to be able to solve anything, which I really like. And there's mixtures of comedy, of tragedy, the fact that it's a perfect episode as well of the whole fact that he has a gang. It's a gang of characters in the beginning, and you start to lose them as the episode goes on. And it's really one of those episodes where you know that not a lot of people are going to survive, but the Doctor has more important matters to deal with because he's got to save 6 billion people, and you got to get your priorities straight. A couple of 100 people on the Titanic, or 6-7 billion people on Earth. You really have to get your priorities straight. And it really mirrors the day of the Doctor in a way, too, in how the Doctor destroyed Gallifrey. But I'm not even going to get to that yet. But it's a good episode. I like it personally better than the other 2 episodes I've mentioned. But, well, you know. Alright, so now we get to my kind of least favorite episode, which is the Cybermen episode, The Next Doctor. Now, it's a very good premise. It continues the idea of the whole watch that the Doctor had during Season 3. And it starts off the 4 specials that the poor Whovians would have to try to suck in during their long year without Doctor Who. But it's not a bad episode. It's just not a very... It's not a very strong episode. It's not a very memorable one, and it's not one that people really tend to like. And it was a Christmas special. It's one of the weaker Christmas specials of Tennant, and ironically, it's one of the episodes where it doesn't have to do with him like throughout his story. But although what it does start to introduce a little bit is the fact that the Doctor doesn't travel with companions anymore, and the fact that someone with such a tragic backstory as Jackson Lake can be the Doctor and think he's the Doctor. I mean, we all as Whovians wish that we could be the Doctor, but when we realize that we're not the Doctor, it's sort of like, okay, we're not the Doctor, we're not going to be the Doctor, he's a fictional character. But Jackson Lake truly believes he was the Doctor, and then not only does he get stripped of that power, but he also realizes why he became the Doctor, because the Cybermen, who didn't really have a strong presence in this episode. With good reason, because it kind of was introducing the whole idea of this could be a new Doctor, this could be the next Doctor, and alas, it's not. But it's a fun, it's an adventurous episode. It's filled with adventure. It's got these two characters that you introduce. Not very strong, but the thing that really makes me think at the end is when Tennant is thinking about whether or not he's going to stay for dinner, because that's the one thing. His companions and all these characters ask him, stay for Christmas dinner, stay for dinner, even in the Matt Smith era. And he really stops to think, because that, for some reason, really triggers in the Doctor's mind whether or not he should become friends with his companions and really care about them, because he's only going to wind up losing them in the end. Now, the next episode, Planet of the Dead, I personally like it a little bit more than the next Doctor, but some people don't. I like it just because it's a plain, silly episode, and it's an episode that was just an episode to be written, just to fill the gap, to have a little bit of Doctor Who in it, but it has some good components. It has one of those companions, the companion that never was, in Lady Christina D'Souza, who, interestingly enough, she is a thief. She's not, this girl like Rose who doesn't really know what's going on, her life's kind of boring, and the Doctor swoops her away for a life of adventure, or a noble character like Martha, who's a doctor, and is taken away by the Doctor because she wants a little bit of adventure and wants to see what the world's really like. No, she's a thief. This is someone who doesn't have the same morals, if really any similar morals to the Doctor, but she's not entirely the opposite of the Doctor. I've heard recently, I just thought I'd bring this up, that some people consider that hate is not the opposite of love. Indifference is actually the opposite of love, because the feeling of indifference is completely different to the feeling of love. The feeling of hate is sort of more of a passion, just like love is. And honestly, I can tie this in right now to the Daleks, because they are more similar to the Doctor than any indifferent, dumb character that you hate, which is why you don't hate the Daleks, but you hate these characters who really just don't have a care in the world. And the same could be said about Lady Christina, that she's so similar to the Doctor, but is kind of his it's sort of the anti-Doctor, but just the idea and the fact that he's not going to take on any more companions just doesn't give her the chance to do that. Plus, it's got those funny moments, like the fact with Malcolm. It, honestly, his little bantering back and forth with him, it's honestly similar, in a way, to Time Crash, because you see the 5th Doctor thinking of the 10th Doctor as a fan, and the 10th Doctor thinking how ridiculous that is, and then he meets, essentially, his biggest fan in Malcolm, and he has, these little quirky moments, like when he tells him, before I die of old age, which, in my case, would be quite an achievement, so congratulations on that. Is there anybody else I could talk to? It's just funny. It's just funny. It's pure Doctor Who humor that I just love, and the people on the bus, it sort of mirrors Midnight in terms of the fact that you have different people on the bus, and plus, it reintroduces the idea of he will knock 4 times, which kind of leads the way to the Master. But, not yet. We have one of the Doctor Who episodes that make me actually cry. I cry during this episode because it's so tragic, and let me explain why. The Doctor is fantastic. The story is fantastic, and the characters are fantastic. And let me tell you why. The Doctor himself is sort of still exploring. He ends up on Mars, and he realizes where he is. He's in this base of the first human settlement on Mars. But then he realizes that this is a fixed event in time where everybody is going to die for an unknown reason. And this obviously hasn't happened yet, so it's sort of a potential historical event and what actually happened and how he can't change the fixed event, just like in Pompeii. So what he does is, he wants to leave so badly, but everybody else is sort of trying to figure out who he is. And there's all these different characters. There's medical practitioners. I mean, they're not strong characters, but they're the characters that you kind of grow to appreciate just as people, as normal, regular people. Not as strong as characters in Planet of the Dead or Midnight, but just regular people who are trying to do something for the Earth and for their world and for their species. And yet they're going to meet this tragic end because the Doctor can't figure out how to save them without spoiling this fixed point. And you have a very strong character in Adelaide, in which the Doctor doesn't want to help. And she's sort of thinking, why can't you help? And then he explains to her why he can't help. And she just she's so scared, and you see the fear in her eyes, and yet when the Doctor comes back and declares that he's the last Time Lord, the laws of time will obey him, and he has this Time Lord victorious kind of attitude, and sort of like the I'm fed up of listening to someone because I am the Doctor. And honestly, I as a fan kind of agree. The Doctor's like the most powerful being in the universe at this point in the Doctor Who series, and why shouldn't he be able to make his own rules? And yet, when he saves the few people he's able to save, and then, honestly, goes back home, realizes that he was wrong and that Adelaide Brooke commits suicide. And then he realizes he was wrong and he sees the Ood, which is just standing there staring at him. And he's asking, is this it? Is it my death? It's just such a powerful episode. I know I'm just kind of rambling now and not really analyzing it, but I don't have a script in front of me that I really planned on anything saying. This is sort of like more of a rant, but honestly, one of my favorite episodes, and a strong episode by David Tennant and by everybody else that's in it. The end of time. Just hearing those 4 words just creates this, such a powerful vision in your head. I can't. All right, let me explain what I like about it. Wilfred, who is Donna's grandfather, who is very much a key part of Donna's life, and really he brings out the good in Donna. Not that Donna's mother brings out the bad in her, but he really brings out the good in her. And the episode begins with this one man who somehow can remember the dreams that everybody else forgets, and it's about the Master. You're immediately intrigued. Wait, the Master died. How can he be coming back? This is only the second instance that we've encountered him as at least as New Whovians, and it's just, it starts off very, very nicely, and then Tennant sort of bursts onto the scene like, I kind of explored the universe a little bit. I don't really care that my death's coming up. I might as well enjoy myself. But the Ood the Ood species are looking at him just in a way that something just doesn't seem right. Even for the Doctor, even something that it's like, oh, I was away for a while, but I can solve this problem. No, this is a problem that has grown because the Doctor hasn't been there. And the Doctor starts to realize that with the fact that the Ood civilization is advancing far faster than the Doctor could have anticipated. And then the Master's coming back, and this one man is being haunted by these dreams. And then it brings back the character of Donna after her mind has been wiped, and sort of introduces the Master. And because the episode is so long, there's so many moments that I can't even describe, because there's so many scenes that, like, they don't seem like they need to be there, but it's like, it's a movie, so you need those subtle scenes, like when the Master starts eating the hamburger. And he's just there. He says that how he's so hungry. He just keeps repeating the same thing. He meets up with the Doctor. He continues the whole sound of the drums. But not only that, was that the plot twist in that the Time Lords are going to come back. Meanwhile, this is a plot thread that has been present since the beginning of the revival of New Who, of Doctor Who. Gallifrey's gone, the Time Lords are gone, but now there's this new introduction of that the Time Lords are there and present in the fact that they're returning, and the Master's going to kill the Doctor, and he doesn't exactly know what the prophecy is going to be. And a prophecy is a prophecy. You know, in any prophecy movie, even though as much as people try to avoid the prophecy, it's going to catch up to you sooner or later. And I just love how Wilfred sort of takes the old warrior's perspective of it. And the Doctor is also an old warrior, but just somehow it's just different. And the exchange between Wilfred and the Doctor is just so heartfelt, and so how they're both so noble, no pun intended, even though Wilfred Mott is not a noble. But anyway, just how great of characters they actually are, and how great they play off each other. And just every single powerful scene really makes you sit there and think about the Doctor and his one final allons-y and his little outburst that some people call like a childish outburst, but I personally think it's a fantastic outburst in a very fitting way to end the 10th Doctor's reign as the Doctor. And then not only that, but you get a whole 10-minute, when you think that he's going to regenerate at the end, you get a whole 10-minute homage to him and all his companions, and you really start to, it builds up the feeling. And then between that and the song and the regeneration, it's a fantastic way for a fantastic Doctor to go out at the time. And honestly, even now, as much as I think Matt Smith's was epic in itself, David Tennant's regeneration, I think, is just, it was the most powerful, and it was just the most, the episode leading up to it was so fantastic, and it was a great way to end David Tennant's reign as the Doctor. Well, that's it. That's the last of the David Tennant editorials. Hope you guys enjoyed them. I'm going to try to post some videos with Matt Smith in them. All of Matt Smith's episodes, series 5, 6, 7, and the specials. Hopefully, I don't know if I'll be able to get that many videos done by the time the new series comes out, and I'm moving to college. I'm going to California. I'm currently in New Jersey, moving to California. So, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get a chance to do another one, but as of right now, allons-y, and hope to see you guys in my next video.